U.S. President Donald Trump showing no signs of backing down from his tariff agenda as old complaints about Canada surface again, adding to the already tense relationship. Still, the Trump administration insists this is not the end of free trade with its neighbors. When U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that free trade with Canada is still possible, many were surprised. After months of tariff threats, some reaching 35%, the tone suddenly seemed less absolute. But the question isn't whether Trump changed his mind. It's why. Something clearly shifted behind closed doors. Because even as Trump keeps the pressure high, Ottawa may be holding a card that Washington can't afford to lose. That card is Canada's role in energy, and more specifically uranium. The largest uranium supply comes out of Saskatchewan and moves over to Ontario before getting enriched down in the U.S. Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft are all betting on nuclear energy to power their AI data centers. From California to Virginia, tech giants like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft are expanding massive data centers, and all of them have one thing in common. They demand enormous amounts of electricity, clean, constant, and carbon-free. Nuclear power, once overlooked, is now back in the spotlight, and uranium, its essential fuel, is in critically short supply. The U.S. has tried to revive domestic uranium production. In 2024, America mined only 676,939 pounds, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That's less than 1.5% of the roughly 48 million pounds America currently needs each year, and the gap is only growing wider. Trump's own executive orders target 190 million pounds per year by 2050 as nuclear power quadruples to meet energy demand. But there's a fundamental problem. America now imports over 95% of its uranium, and the infrastructure for enrichment and processing is still dominated by Russia and China, two geopolitical rivals. That's why Canada's uranium supply has become absolutely vital. The Cigar Lake mine in Saskatchewan, operated by Cameco, produces 11% of global uranium demand, and a significant though undisclosed portion heads directly into the U.S. nuclear fuel cycle. If Canada brings that leverage to the negotiating table, it could change everything. And uranium is just the beginning. Canada isn't just waiting for Trump's phone call. It's already shifting its energy exports away from the U.S. In July 2025, Canada shipped its first liquefied natural gas LNG cargo to South Korea from the massive LNG Canada terminal in British Columbia. With more LNG projects under development like Cedar LNG and Woodfibre LNG, Canada is building new energy corridors to Asia. Meanwhile, uranium exports to the European Union are surging. France's EDF signed long-term contracts for Canadian uranium to help reduce EU dependence on Russian energy. And in this broader strategy, Trump's tariffs have ironically accelerated Canada's diversification. By turning to Asia and Europe, Ottawa has reduced its reliance on American buyers and increased its leverage in return. Of course, the U.S. has other energy suppliers. Australia, for example, ships uranium to American utilities. But even that relationship is under strain. Trade tensions, especially over pharmaceutical pricing and rare earths, have begun to affect broader economic ties. Other past suppliers like Russia and Belarus are either sanctioned or politically untenable. What's left is a short list, and Canada is at the top, not just for uranium, but also for nickel, aluminum, auto parts, and crude oil. Ontario alone holds the world's most accessible reserves of high-grade nickel, which is critical for electric vehicles, defense systems, and AI servers. With supply chains so closely tied, the message is hard to miss. The two economies are simply too integrated to pull apart. Donald Trump has announced that he wants a golden age for the American economy. That means they're going to need more energy, more minerals, more steel and aluminum, more lumber, more concrete. More of the things that Canada is already sending them. Uranium and energy more broadly isn't just a Canadian export, it's leverage. In a negotiation driven by tariffs and tension, it might be the key to securing a deal with Trump. That's why, despite all the pressure and posturing, a partial deal before August 1st remains on the table. Canada may agree to some targeted tariffs on autos or steel, but only if its core energy exports remain protected. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says a proposal for a new oil pipeline in Canada is highly likely. The bottom line is a new east-west coast pipeline in Canada is good for Canadians. As President Trump ramps up tariffs against Canada, Ottawa is responding not with speeches or countermeasures, but with something far more strategic. For the first time, Canadian liquefied natural gas is being shipped directly to Asia, bypassing the United States entirely. In early July, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney confirmed what many had suspected. Canada is moving ahead with a proposed pipeline connecting Alberta's oil fields to the Pacific coast. This east-west pipeline would allow Canadian oil to bypass American refineries entirely, a strategic shift at a time when U.S. tariffs are rising. In British Columbia, LNG Canada has now shipped its first cargo of liquefied natural gas to North Asia. The $40 billion project, the largest private investment in Canadian history, has capacity for 14 million tons annually, and it could double. Why does this matter now? Because nearly 97% of Canada's oil and gas exports still go to the US. That's been a long-standing vulnerability. But LNG is shifting that. Asia now accounts for over 70% of global LNG demand. The United States might be the world's top oil producer with a record 13.4 million barrels per day in July 2025, according to the Energy Information Administration. But production is only one part of the equation. If Canada cuts or diverts supply, U.S. refiners could face higher costs. Consumers could see higher fuel prices. Even more, industries tied to energy like electric vehicles, heavy manufacturing, and construction could feel the pressure. According to the San Francisco Federal Reserve, U.S. GDP could shrink by 0.4% over the medium term due to these tariffs. Inflation has already climbed to 2.7% as of June, partly driven by increased import costs. And 45% of all U.S. imports are inputs, materials, and components used by domestic manufacturers. When tariffs go up, so do their production costs. That means higher prices, slower hiring, and less room to invest. Canada is in the middle of a trade standoff it never asked for, but it may still be able to shape how this story ends. As Trump's 35% tariffs loom, many expected Canada to cave quickly under pressure. But that hasn't happened. Instead, Prime Minister Mark Carney has taken a disciplined approach, deliberate, methodical, and unusually quiet in contrast to Trump's headline-driven playbook. His goal is not to win a public shouting match, but to secure real exemptions where it matters most: energy, steel, aluminum, and autos. This isn't about getting to zero tariffs. The likely landing zone, a general tariff rate in the 8 to 10% range with key sectors carved out. That wouldn't be a victory in full, but it would be a reversal of momentum away from Trump's terms and toward Canada's priorities. Trump may still get his headline, but if Canada emerges with key sectors protected and a broader strategy for independence intact, the real story may not be one of submission. It may be one of quiet defiance. If you found this video valuable, give it a like and subscribe for more. Also, for more coverage of US-Canada trade news, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to be the first to hear the news.